Cross, written by James Patterson, and read by Peter J. Fernandez and J.O. Sanders.
Prologue. What is your name, sir?
I'm Dr. Thompson with the Berkshire Medical Center. How many shots did you hear?
Multiple shots.
What is your name, sir?
Alex Cross.
Are you having trouble breathing? Experiencing any pain?
Pain in my abdomen. Feel liquid sloshing around. Shortness of breath.
You know that you were shot?
Yes, twice. Is he dead? The butcher. Michael Sullivan.
I don't know. Several men are dead. Okay, guys, get me an unrebreather mask. 2 wide base IV lines. Stat. 2 liters IV saline solution. Now! We're going to try to move you. Get you to a hospital immediately, Mr. Cross. You just hold on. Can you still hear me? Are you with me?
My kids. Tell them I love them. Part 1. No one will ever love you the way I do. 1993. Chapter 1. I'm pregnant, Alex. Everything about the night is so very clear to me. Still is. After all this time, all these years that have passed, everything that's happened, the horrible murderers, the homicides solved and sometimes not. I stood in the darkened bedroom with my arms lightly circling my wife Maria's waist, my chin resting on her shoulder. I was 31 then, and had never been happier at any time of my life. Nothing even came close to what we had together. Maria, Damon, Janny, and me. It was the fall of 1993. 1,000,000 years ago, it seems to me now. It was also past 2 in the morning, and our baby Janny had the croup something terrible. Poor sweet girl had been up for most of the night, most of the last few nights, most of her young life. Maria was gently rocking Janny in her arms, humming, "You Are So Beautiful," and I had my arms around Maria, rocking her. I was the one who'd gotten up first, but I couldn't seem to get Janny back to sleep no matter what tricks I tried. Maria had come in and taken the baby after an hour or so. We both had work early in the morning. I was on a murder case. "You're pregnant?" I said against Maria's shoulder. "Bad timing, huh, Alex? You see a lot more croup in your future? Binkies? More dirty diapers? Nights like this one? I don't like this part so much, being up late or early, whatever this is. But I love our life, Maria, and I love that we're going to have another baby." I held on to Maria and turned on the music from the mobile dangling over Janelle's crib. We danced in place to Someone to Watch Over Me. Then she gave me that beautiful, partly bashful, partly goofy smile of hers, the one I'd fallen for, maybe on the very first night I ever saw her. We had met in the emergency room at St. Anthony's during an emergency. Maria had brought in a gangbanger, a gunshot victim, a client of hers. She was a dedicated social worker, and she was being protective, especially since I was a dreaded Metro homicide detective, and she didn't exactly trust the police. Then again, neither did I. I held Maria a little tighter. "I'm happy. You know that. I'm glad you're pregnant. Let's celebrate. I'll get some champagne. You like being the big daddy, huh?" "I do. Don't know why exactly, I just do." "You like screaming babies in the middle of the night. This too shall pass. Isn't that right, Janelle?" "Young lady, I'm talking to you." Maria turned her head away from the wailing baby and gave me a sweet kiss on the lips. Her mouth was soft, always inviting, always sexy. I loved her kisses, anytime, anywhere. She finally wriggled out of my arms. "Go back to bed, Alex. No sense both of us being up. Get some sleep for me, too." Just then I noticed something else in the bedroom, and I started to laugh. Couldn't help myself. "What's so funny?" Maria smiled. I pointed, and she saw it, too. 3 apples, each one with a single childlike bite out of it. The apples were propped on the legs of 3 stuffed toys, different-colored Barney dinosaurs. Toddler Damon's fantasy play was revealed to us. Our little boy had been spending some time in his sister Janny's room. As I got to the doorway, Maria gave me that goofy smile of hers again, and a wink. She whispered, and I will never forget what she said. "I love you, Alex. No one will ever love you the way I do." Chapter 2.
40 miles north of D.C., in Baltimore, 2 cocksure long-haired hitmen in their mid to late 20s ignored the members-only sign and sashayed into the St. Francis Social Club on South High Street, not far from the harbor. Both men were heavily armed and smiling like a couple of stand-up comedians. There were 27 capos and soldiers in the clubroom that night, playing cards, drinking grappa and espresso, watching the Bullets lose to the Knicks on TV. Suddenly, the room was quiet and on edge. Nobody just walked into St. Francis of Assisi, especially not uninvited and armed. One of the intruders in the doorway, a man named Michael Sullivan, calmly saluted the group. This was some funny shit, Sullivan was thinking to himself. All these Goomba tough guys sitting around chewing their cud. His companion, or compadre, Jimmy Hats Galati, glanced around the room from under the brim of a beat-up black fedora, like the one worn by Squiggy on Laverne and Shirley. The social club was pretty typical. Straight chairs, card tables, makeshift bar, guineas coming out of the woodwork. "No welcoming committee for us? No brass bands?" asked Sullivan, who lived for confrontation of any kind, verbal or physical. It had always been him and Jimmy Hats against everybody else, ever since they were 15 and ran away from their homes in Brooklyn. "Who the hell are you?" asked a foot soldier who rose like steam from one of the rickety card tables. He was maybe 6'2", with jet black hair, and weighed 220 or so, obviously worked with weights. "He's the Butcher of Sligo. You ever hear of him?" said Jimmy Hats. "We're from New York City. Ever hear of New York City?"
Chapter 3.
The buffed-up mob soldier didn't react, but an older man in a black suit and white shirt buttoned to the collar raised his hand like the Pope or something, and spoke slowly and deliberately in heavily accented English. "To what do we owe this honor?" he asked. "Of course we heard of the Butcher. Why are you here in Baltimore? What can we do for you?" "We're just passing through," Michael Sullivan spoke to the old man. "Have to do a little job for Mr. Maggione in D.C. You gentlemen heard of Mr. Maggione?" Heads nodded around the room. The tenor of the conversation so far suggested that this was definitely serious business. Dominic Maggione controlled the family in New York, which ran most of the East Coast, down as far as Atlanta anyway. Everybody in the room knew who Dominic Maggione was, and that the Butcher was his most ruthless hitman. Supposedly he used butcher knives, scalpels, and mallets on his victims. A reporter in Newsday had said of one of his murders, "No human being could have done this." The Butcher was feared in mob circles and by the police, so it was a surprise to those in the room that the killer was so young, and that he looked like a movie actor with his long blonde hair and striking blue eyes. "So where's the respect? I hear that word a lot, but I don't see any in this club," said Jimmy Hats, who, like the Butcher, had a reputation for amputating hands and feet. The soldier who had stood up suddenly made his move, and the Butcher's arm shot forward in a blur. He sliced off the tip of the man's nose and then the lobe of an ear. The soldier grabbed at his face in 2 places and stepped back so fast he lost his balance and fell hard on the wood plank floor. The Butcher was fast, and obviously as good as promised with a knife. He was like the old-time assassins from Sicily, and that's how he had learned knife play, from one of the old soldiers in South Brooklyn. Amputation and bone-crunching had come easily to him. He considered them his trademark, symbols of his ruthlessness. Jimmy Hats had a gun out, a .44 caliber semi-automatic. Hats was also known as Jimmy the Protector, and he had the butcher's back. Always. Now Michael Sullivan slowly walked around the room. He kicked over a couple of card tables, shut off the TV, and pulled the plug on the espresso machine. Everyone suspected that somebody was going to die. But why? Why had Dominic Maggioni unleashed this madman on them? "I see some of you are expecting a little show," he said. "I see it in your eyes. I smell it." "Well, hell, I don't want to disappoint anybody." Suddenly, Sullivan went down on one knee and stabbed the wounded mob soldier where he lay on the floor. He stabbed the man in the throat, then in the face and chest until there was no movement in the body. It was hard to count the strokes, but it must have been a dozen, probably more. Then, the strangest thing of all, Sullivan stood up and took a bow over the dead man's body, as if this was all a big show to him, all just an act. Finally, the butcher turned his back on the room and walked unconcerned toward the door. No fear of anything or anyone. He called over his shoulder, "Nice meeting you, gentlemen. Next time, show some respect. For Mr. Maggioni, if not for myself and Mr. Jimmy Hatz." Jimmy Hatz grinned at the room and tipped his fedora. "Yeah, he's that good," he said. "Tell you what, he's even better with a chainsaw."
Chapter 4.
The butcher and Jimmy Hatz laughed their asses off about the St. Francis of Assisi Social Club visit for most of the ride down I-95 to Washington, where they had a tricky job to do in the next day or two. Mr. Maggioni had ordered them to stop in Baltimore and make an impression. The Don suspected that a couple of the local capos were skimming on him. The butcher figured he'd done his job. That was a part of his growing reputation. Not just that he was good at killing, but that he was as reliable as a heart attack for a fat man eating fried eggs and bacon. They were entering D.C., taking the scenic route past the Washington Monument and other important la-di-da buildings. "My country 'tis of thee," sang Jimmy Hatz in a seriously off-key voice. Sullivan snorted out a laugh. "You're a corker yourself, James, my boy. Where the hell did you learn that? My country 'tis of thee?" "St. Patrick's Parish School, Brooklyn, New York, where I learn everything I know about the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, and where I met this crazy bastard named Michael Sean Sullivan." 20 minutes later, they had parked the Grand Am and joined the late-night youth parade traipsing along M Street in Georgetown. Bunch of mopey-dopey college punks, plus him and Jimmy, a couple of brilliant professional killers, thought Sullivan. So who was doing better in life? Who was making it, and who wasn't? "Ever think you should have gone to college?" asked Hatz. "Couldn't afford the cut and pay," Sullivan said. 18, I was already making 75 grand. Besides, I love my job. They stopped at Charlie Malone's, a local watering hole popular with the Washington College crowd for no good reason Sullivan could figure. Neither the butcher nor Jimmy Hatz had gone past high school, but inside the bar, Sullivan struck up an easy conversation with a couple of co-eds, no more than 20 years old, probably still in their late teens. Sullivan read a lot and remembered most of it, so he could talk with just about anybody. His repertoire tonight included the recent shootings of American soldiers in Somalia, a couple hot new movies, even some romantic poetry, Blake and Yeats, which seemed to appeal to the college ladies. In addition to his charm, though, Michael Sullivan was a looker, and he knew it. Slim but nicely toned, 6'1", longish blonde hair, a smile that could dazzle anybody he chose to use it on. So it was no major surprise when 20-year-old Marianne Riley from Burkittsville, Maryland, started making none too subtle goo-goo eyes at him and touching him in the way forward girls sometimes do. Sullivan leaned in close to the girl, who smelled like wildflowers. "Marianne, Marianne." There used to be a song. Calypso tune, you know it? "Marianne, Marianne." "Before my time," the girl said, but then she winked at him. She had the most gorgeous green eyes, full red lips, and the cutest little